Did you know that one U.S. president won an election without even campaigning? Or that another lost the popular vote but still became president? In this video, we'll uncover some of the most surprising facts about U.S. presidential elections you never knew. The election that ended in a tie. The 1800 election between Thomas Jefferson and Aaron Burr ended in an electoral college tie, leaving the House of Representatives to decide the winner. After 36 ballots, Jefferson finally came out on top, but the process was so chaotic that it led to the creation of the 12th Amendment, which changed how elections are handled. Winners who lost the popular vote. 5 presidents have won the election despite losing the popular vote. Notable instances include John Quincy Adams in 1824 and George W. Bush in 2000. This unique outcome is a result of the Electoral College system. The non-campaigning president. You'd think presidential candidates would have to campaign to win, right? Not always. In 1840, William Henry Harrison won the presidency without making a single public speech. He let his supporters do all the work, showing just how different elections used to be. The shortest presidential term in history. Most U.S. presidents serve at least 4 years, but William Henry Harrison holds the record for the shortest term in history. He served just 31 days after catching pneumonia during his long inaugural address on a cold, rainy day in 1841. His death led to the first presidential succession crisis, ultimately resulting in Vice President John Tyler taking over. The last non-Democrat or Republican president. Zachary Taylor was the last person to win a presidential election without being a member of the Republican or Democratic parties. He was a Whig who won the 1848 election, but he only served a little over a year before passing away, allowing his vice president, Millard Fillmore, to take over. A candidate's death during the election process. In 1872, Horace Greeley, a major candidate, died after the election, but before the Electoral College cast its votes. This led to a chaotic distribution of his electoral votes to other candidates, demonstrating the unpredictable nature of presidential elections. The only president to serve non-consecutive terms. Grover Cleveland is the only president in U.S. history to serve 2 non-consecutive terms. He won in 1884, lost in 1888, then came back to win again in 1892. This made him both the 22nd and 24th president, an election oddity still unmatched. The election that broke records. The 1876 election between Rutherford B. Hayes and Samuel Tilden was one of the most controversial in U.S. history. It wasn't just the controversy that made it memorable, though. It also had the highest voter turnout in U.S. history, with over 81% of eligible voters casting ballots, a record that still stands today. While Tilden won the popular vote, Hayes secured the presidency after a bitter dispute that led to the Compromise of 1877. This election still holds the record for the smallest electoral margin ever. The first woman to run for president. Most people think of Hillary Clinton as the first woman to run for president, but that's not true. In 1872, Victoria Woodhull became the first woman to run for the highest office. Although she didn't receive many votes, she paved the way for future generations of women in politics. The youngest major party nominee. William Jennings Bryan holds the record as the youngest nominee for a major political party at just 36 years old during the 1896 election. Although he lost to William McKinley, Bryan's influence in subsequent elections helped shape American politics. The closest third-party candidate. The closest a third-party candidate has come to winning a presidential election was in 1912, when Theodore Roosevelt ran as the Progressive Party nominee. He garnered 88 electoral votes and 27.4% of the popular vote, finishing second to Woodrow Wilson. The first election with modern polling. In the 1936 election, Franklin D. Roosevelt achieved a historic victory by winning 523 out of 531 Electoral College votes, the largest share in a contested election. This election also marked the first time scientific polling was used, but the Literary Digest mistakenly predicted a big win for his opponent, Alf Landon. Roosevelt's landslide showed not only his popularity, but also the problems with early polling methods, reminding everyone of the risks of depending on polls to predict election results. The first televised debate. Fast forward to 1960, and the game changed completely. The first ever televised debate between John F. Kennedy and Richard Nixon transformed how Americans viewed elections. Many say Kennedy's calm and collected appearance on TV won him the election over a nervous Nixon, marking the start of modern political media strategy. The first African-American presidential candidate. Before Barack Obama made history as the first African-American president, there was Shirley Chisholm. In 1972, she became the first African-American to seek a major party's nomination for president. She didn't win, but her candidacy broke barriers and inspired future generations of leaders. Most states won in an election. Richard Nixon and Ronald Reagan share the record for winning the most states in a presidential election, each carrying 49 out of 50 states in 1972 and 1984, respectively. Nixon lost only Massachusetts, while Reagan lost Minnesota, showcasing their overwhelming popularity. The youngest and oldest presidents. When it comes to age, U.S. elections have seen it all. Theodore Roosevelt became the youngest president when he assumed office at 42 years old after McKinley's assassination. However, John F. Kennedy holds the title for the youngest elected president, winning the 1960 election at 43. On the other hand, Joe Biden became the oldest president at 78 when he was elected in 2020. Presidents losing in their home states. 4 U.S. presidents have lost their home state in the election, but still won overall, demonstrating that local support doesn't always translate to national success. Notable examples include James K. Polk, who lost Tennessee in 1844, Woodrow Wilson, who lost New Jersey in 1916, and Richard Nixon and Donald Trump, both of whom lost New York, Nixon in 1968 and Trump in 2016. Unanimous election of George Washington. George Washington was unanimously elected as the first president of the United States in 1789, with no opponents and full support from both the Federalists and Anti-Federalists. He was re-elected in 1792 under the same conditions. Richard Nixon's unique ballot history. Richard Nixon has appeared on the presidential ballot more times than any other major party candidate, having participated in 5 elections. His journey includes victories with Dwight D. Eisenhower and later as a presidential candidate himself. Presidential elections have shaped American history in ways you may not expect. From unprecedented victories to controversial outcomes, every election tells a story of its own. Which fact surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments.